Welcome, JullianLakritz. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining this interview. I really appreciate it. I became aware of your business through uh, a textbook that I'm using. And you know Heidi Neck from the textbook, and there's a case in it by you. And you, as I'm telling the crowd, not, I mean, you know all
Yeah.
this, but Yoey Baby is the cutest toy ever. You have a number of them, and I bought it for my grandson. But I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we're going to ask you some questions. Jillian is a master innovation brand and consumer insights strategist, a patented inventor, and an entrepreneur. Her passion for marketing and innovation is fueled by her natural curiosity, creative instincts, love of new products, and fascination with consumer behavior. And I could go on and on about you because you have just done so many things. You have an award-winning toy company. I see, kudos all over for you. And you're a speaker at the Leeds School of Business. You live up in Boulder, Colorado. Let's just get started. I would love to hear how you got into business and how you started your first venture.
Well, it's funny. I never, ever intended to go down the path of business or entrepreneurship. I actually wanted to get a master's in arts administration and was living in Boulder and ended up getting a job at an old dairy processing plant that was being turned into a performing arts center. And through that experience, learned that you needed really sharp business skills to run an arts organization. And just was living in Boulder at the time and had a great community, decided to go get an MBA instead of this master's in arts administration. And while I was getting my MBA, I had this aha moment about the study of entrepreneurship, and that really my passion was about sort of creating things, not necessarily art, and that you can do it in the business world for profit. And it just took me down a different path. And then my first venture out of, or my first opportunity really out of business school was helping to open up a chain of early childhood development centers called Creme de la Creme. And I traveled around the country helping this developer open up these early childhood centers, and realized that early childhood wasn't necessarily the space I wanted to be in at the time. And so I ended up switching, sort of leaving that position and getting into the sort of .com world. And gosh, one path led to the next, to the next.
That's awesome. Now, Yoey Baby is your new toy. How long have you been working on that one? When did that all start?
Well, it's we're still a relatively young company. We've been in the market for 4 years, but the honest truth is I've been working on this for about a decade. So I had the idea for Yoey when my oldest kiddo was just born. She is 11 and a half. So if that tells you how long it took to get to this place, but it was just an idea at first. I tinkered with it on the side. And then in 2014, January of 2014, I finally said, if I want to do this, I'm going to put everything else aside and really dive in head first. So it's really been since January of 2014 that I've been, giving it 100% of my energy.
That's awesome. What was the hardest part of starting it up?
I think the hardest part for me was figuring out how to manufacture this idea that I had in my head. And like, where does one start? For me, the experience came from caressing my little infant with a feather. And it was this really transformational experience for us. We were bonding and connecting and smiling and playing and all the things that you want when you have a new kiddo. But a feather isn't baby safe. So I had this idea, what if I could make a baby safe feather out of fabric? So trying to figure out how to manufacture nature's perfection, which is a feather that sort of moves really ergonomically and is soft, and make it baby safe and make it sort of fun and feel like a toy, was incredibly challenging, and took me a number of years, not just to figure out what the form factor could be, but we eventually had to invent an internal piece for the toy to make fabric move and act like a feather. And that took a lot of work. And then figuring out, where does one get this made? Sort of scouring the earth for materials and factories who are willing to work with somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're doing, and starting from scratch. And
everybody.
that was really challenging. We went through 3 different factories. We eventually ended up manufacturing in China, and we went through 3 different factories before we found the one that we're currently with and that we feel good about. But those were really trying times, manufacturing product that ultimately we had to pull off the shelves because it didn't perform the way we wanted it to. There was a safety concern. So we've climbed some pretty tall mountains to get here.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking, but did you create the prototype yourself? Did you actually craft it yourself?
That's a great question. I did not. I worked with I didn't know who to work with at first. I had this feather that I used to carry around with me. It's probably like on one of my shelves back there. And I used to carry that darn feather around, and I'd say, like, who can help me make a feather that's baby safe? I had a friend who said, well, I sew, and maybe I can sew the feather. So that was the very first person who ever touched it. And then eventually I found, through multiple iterations, a toy designer, someone locally who actually designed toys, and he took a stab at it. And then I eventually found somebody in New York who really was a notch above that, and they took it to the next level. And that's, and then we kept working on it and iterating. And once we got it into the factory's hands, they iterated on it. So it's been evolving along the way.
That's great. So you actually made the trip to China to try and set this all up. Is that right? Initially, or every time you switched factories, you had to go?
Well, that's a great question. And really, every time you switch, you should go. I made one critical mistake along the way. The first factory that we landed with, I went to China first. We met a bunch of different factories. We chose the one that we felt the most comfortable with, we had a relationship with. After our first production run, or maybe it was our second production run, their costs started climbing. They weren't able to fix some of the production challenges that we had. So I was working with a sourcing company, and they said, we'll get you to a better factory. And we didn't go to China. We relied on the sourcing company to pick the factory, manage the relationship. And it was an unmitigated disaster. The product that we got back was totally inferior. We didn't feel comfortable putting it into the market. It almost put us out of business. And then for the third factory, you can bet you about $1, we hightailed it back to China, and we said, we're not doing this again. And it really is so important, if you're going to manufacture something, to know your supply chain. To touch it, to feel it, to meet the people who are sourcing the materials for you, particularly when it's so far away, so that you understand and what's going into your product.
How did you even know how to get in touch with someone? And obviously, I don't know if you speak Chinese or not, but did you have somebody to guide you the whole time, or how did it work?
I didn't. I had and continue to have no idea what I'm doing in this crazy journey of entrepreneurship. I mean, a day doesn't go by when I'm not faced with a challenge where I literally have no idea how to solve it. So every day is just learning, going up that learning curve. But one of the things I did really early on is, because I didn't know anything about making a toy and I knew nobody in the toy industry, is I just started talking to people. And through networking, I found somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who had done something with toys. And I just knocked down that door and I said, how do you make a toy? And I eventually got led to an organization called Women in Toys. And it's a national organization that was founded to support women who are in the toy licensing and entertainment industry. And they had national chapters all over the country, but they didn't have one in Colorado. And I called them up and I said, I need some help. I need some people. Would you guys consider opening one here? And they were like, sure. We actually have someone who's interested, just sit tight. And I sat patiently for, a month, 2 months, nothing happened. I called them back and I said, hey, I'm really eager to find some people. Are you guys going to do that? They're like, well, just sit tight. I sat tight for another couple months. And eventually I just called them up and I said, I'm going to do this. I need to find some people. So either I'll open the chapter for you, let me be the chapter chair, or I'm going to go start my own thing. And they were like, okay, why don't you go ahead and do that? So I launched the Colorado chapter of Women in Toys and used some of the existing infrastructure that they had to do a shout out to like, hey, anybody out there in the in Colorado who wants to talk about toys, and started finding a community and found a community through the national network. And that was really, really helpful.
That's great. I know in the case study talks a lot about the importance of networking and how you networked a lot. And one of the case questions, I'd love for you to answer it. It's like, what was more important, the idea or the network?
Well, that's a really interesting question to ask, because I'm actually in the throes of answering that question on another idea I have. What is the value of that idea relative to all the work that has yet to be done? Listen, an idea is vitally important, right? You can't do something if you don't have the idea, but the idea is only as good as the execution. So you can have a brilliant idea, but if it's poorly executed, it will go nowhere. You can have a kind of just so-so idea. We've seen lots of those in the marketplace, but they're executed brilliantly, or, just market forces come together and you're in the right place at the right time. Those things happen and they are real. I don't know. I think in the end, it really is much more about execution than it is about the idea, but there's no doubt the idea is hopefully what fuels your passion. I mean, for anybody who births an idea, it's your child, and it means a lot.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. I'm hoping my grad students aren't watching me because they're going to have to answer that. You talked about the P's, persistence and patience, and what are the rest of the P's that
Perseverance, patience, and persistence are probably the three that I talk about the most. Passion, sorry, add that one to the list.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably four, and if I mention them in the case study, that's probably them. I think about them every single day. Again, I mean, like I said before, that day doesn't go by where I'm not faced with the challenge that I literally don't know how to solve it. And there are so many times when I've wanted to give up because it is just crushing in a lot of different ways. But my passion for the idea and my belief that the product that I created can actually do some good in the world fuels my perseverance. And, the idea of giving up just isn't an option. You just have to keep going. And talk about patience. I mean, I did mention I've been at this for over a decade. So you have to be patient. There is no such thing as an overnight success. I think when you hear about those overnight successes, what you don't know are the years of toil that often went into them. There can be this, catalytic moment where something just clicks and it all turns on, but it's very rare that those things happen overnight.
Right. There's a lot behind the scenes we don't know about. Yeah. Well, I just have one more question for you. And my students pose this question. They want me to ask you, what about your work gives you the most joy?
Without a doubt, it is feedback we hear from our customers. I get love notes from new parents who tell me that this is the first time they saw their baby smile, or the connection that they feel playing with their baby is amazing. Or it's, finally my husband knows how to play with my baby, and not to be, to cast any gender stereotypes, but getting dads to play with babies doesn't often come as naturally. And so, just the smiles and the giggles and the coos that people share back to us is really the most rewarding thing. I got into this out of this pure selfish desire that I had, which was, I had so much joy playing with this darn feather with my little one, but I didn't want to give it up. And so if I didn't want to give it up, I had to create something new to play with. And I just wanted to share that joy that I had with new parents, around the world. And the fact that we are able to just bring a little bit of joy into other people's homes is the most rewarding thing and makes it all worthwhile, particularly in 2020.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And I can attest, my grandson loves Joey Baby, loves it. He's 5 months old and they play with it every day, every day. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And as soon as I get the link to this, I'll send it to you so you can see it and share it if you'd like.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye, Jillian. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.